He politely threw a stack of photos onto my desk and said, "Think about it. Let's cooperate." I took a closer look and found that the photos were all fragments of my husband and my best friend being intimate. I stared at the man in front of me, who was holding a helmet and wearing a racing suit, and said, "How do you want to cooperate?" Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins, as soon as Han Song-chin left. My best friend Fong Xiaoyun sent me a WeChat message. "Honey, how do I look in this bikini?" Then, she sent me a photo. In the photo, she had a good figure and her skin was as white as jade. The sky blue bikini made her even more beautiful. However, her right hand was holding someone, but the specific appearance and figure of that person couldn't be seen. I deliberately asked, "You got a boyfriend right after you got divorced?" "Yeah. I mentioned it to you before, when my ex-husband cheated on me. I found this backup. I helped Fong Xiaoyun with her divorce lawsuit against Han Song-chin. I even led the police personally to obtain the video evidence of Han Song-chin being caught in the hotel. All of this was to ensure that my best friend would win the case and that the scumbag would get the punishment he deserved. But now, I'm the clown, because the backup my best friend found is my husband, Gucci, in the photo. The ring finger of that hand was still wearing the same couple ring as mine. 3 days ago, Fong Xiaoyun said she wanted to go out and relax. She took my arm and acted coquettishly. "Xuan, come with me. It's so lonely to go alone," but I really couldn't spare the time. I happened to have another case to deal with these 2 days. I refused, saying, "Be good. I'll go with you as soon as I finish my work." At that time, Fong Xiaoyun stared at Gucci, who was cooking for us in the kitchen, in an ambiguous way and said, "Then let your husband accompany me." I tapped her on the head and said, "Get out of here." She had always been outspoken and liked to joke, so I didn't pay much attention. Upon hearing this, Gucci was suddenly stunned. Then, he turned around holding the cooking spoon and said with a smile, "Xiaoyun, stop joking. I'm really busy with work and don't have the time to amuse you too." Fong Xiaoyun pouted and protested, "You two, as a couple, just don't care about me." "Now that I think about it," she said that on purpose to Gucci. Gucci also doted on her. That night, he told me he had to go on a business trip. It turned out that the two of them had planned to go on a trip together. The next day, Fong Xiaoyun knocked on my door. She hugged me cheerfully, saying, "Baby, I missed you so much." I endured the nausea and pretended to hug her. With a very light force, she noticed something was wrong and pushed me away, asking curiously, "What's wrong with you, Xuan?" I pretended to be relaxed and said, "It's nothing." She didn't doubt it anymore. Instead, she tugged at the dazzling gold necklace around her neck and said, "Look, my boyfriend bought this for me. Is it nice?" I was stunned and stared at it again and again. Wasn't this the year of the snake limited edition fortune necklace that I had taken a fancy to before? I had mentioned it to Gucci, intentionally or unintentionally, that I wanted to receive it on my birthday. But on my birthday, Gucci used the excuse of having to work overtime at the company and couldn't accompany me on my birthday. The next morning, when he came home, I smiled and stretched out my hands, saying, "Gift." As he put down his briefcase, he asked in confusion, "Gift? What gift?" I stood there in a daze, thinking he was joking, but he still looked at me blankly. I then realized that he had completely forgotten my birthday, let alone the gold necklace I had mentioned. But now it seems that he didn't forget my birthday, he just didn't want to celebrate it for me. He was just pretending. I smiled absently and then replied, "It's nice." Fong Xiaoyun raised the corners of her mouth, showing a victorious posture. In the past, I might not have thought there was anything wrong with it, but now, I know that she did it on purpose. Hey, what are we all doing standing at the door? I don't know when Gucci stood behind us. I had expected that they would come back today because there was an important dinner party at the Chiao family tomorrow, and Gucci had to come back. "Since your husband is back, I won't disturb your couple's time together, Feng Xiaoyan said to me, and also gave Gucci a meaningful look. Gucci didn't stop her from leaving. He closed the door and hugged me in his arms. Xuan, I haven't hugged you for a few days. Why do I feel like you've gained weight? His head was buried in my neck, and his warm breath blew against my ear. I chuckled and pushed him away, saying, I haven't gained weight. Maybe you've hugged a woman who is thinner than me. Gucci froze in place, looking flustered for a moment. Quickly, he grabbed me as I was about to turn away and said, Don't say such things. Besides you, who else would I hug? Then, he took out a bag from his pocket and handed it to me, saying, Xuan, this is the birthday gift I'm making up for you. I took it and opened it to have a look. There was a box in the bag, and the bottom of the box was sticky. When I opened it, it was a gold bean ring with a red string. I noticed that there was a gift mark inside the bag. Presumably, this was a gift given when buying the gold necklace. I disdainfully threw the things on the ground and said, No need. Then, I took out the gold necklace that I had wanted from the bedroom. I casually put it on my hand and said to Gucci indifferently, Giving me something that's left over from others and expecting me to be grateful. Gucci, I can afford this thing. Asking you to give it to me was to give you a chance. Gucci's face suddenly turned ugly, but he still refused to admit it and said, Stop making trouble. This was bought for you. I know you're not short of money, but this is my thoughtfulness. I looked at the gift label and nodded disdainfully. At the Chow family's dinner party, Gucci and I interlocked our fingers, and he gracefully talked with the guests. You and your wife are truly a perfect match. After all these years, you're still so in love. I'm so envious. That's right. I bet you'll have a baby soon. Everyone was chatting happily, and Gucci echoed, Soon, Xuan, and I will still be in love even after another 10 years. I raised the corners of my mouth and looked at the man I had once loved deeply, who was full of lies. My stomach felt as if it was churning. Xuan. Feng Xiaoyan's voice sounded behind me. I suddenly turned around and saw her waving at me gracefully. She rushed to my side, took my arm, and said happily, Baby, I can finally attend your family's dinner party. Logically speaking, those who could attend the Chow family's dinner party were either rich or noble. There was only one explanation for Feng Xiaoyan's appearance. Gucci had allowed it. Gucci and I looked at each other for 2 seconds. He mumbled, Why are you looking at me? Isn't Xiaoyan your best friend? Don't you allow her to attend the dinner party? Before I could speak, Feng Xiaoyan acted coquettishly again and said, Baby, I went for an interview at Gucci's company yesterday and passed. He said that since I have a good relationship with you, he would bring me here in advance to experience the grandeur of high society. You're not unhappy, are you? I smiled and said, Of course not. I'm so proud of my sister for being so amazing. Then, I turned my head and said to Gucci, Why didn't you tell me in advance that you hired her? Gucci said, Didn't I want to give you a surprise? I nodded thoughtfully. Just right. I also have a surprise for him. The main purpose of this dinner party was to find a partner for our project, because of the large amount of funds involved. The Chow family specially organized this dinner party, as my husband. Gucci was naturally confident, and the powerful and wealthy people present also flattered him. Seeing that the dinner party was about to start, the person I was waiting for hadn't arrived yet. I was a bit anxious, so I went to look for that person along the corridor. Unexpectedly, when I passed by the stairwell, I heard some strange sounds coming from inside. My hasty steps immediately stopped the sound. Once I get this project, I'll take you to Bali for a trip. No. When are you going to divorce Xuan? I want you to marry me. Just thinking that you have to touch her when you go back at night makes me feel bad. Gucci sneered and said, You're even getting jealous. If it weren't for my parents being eager to have a grandson who would want to touch her, she's always like a dead person every time. So boring. It was still exciting last time, when that stupid Xuan was helping me check the surveillance of Han Songchen. The two of us were in the hotel stairwell. The moment I learned the truth, my blood turned ice cold. It was indeed Gucci who accompanied us that day. I was so absorbed in watching the surveillance that I completely forgot that Gucci and Feng Xiaoyun had gone out one after another. My heart ached so much that I couldn't breathe. Just as I was about to push the door open, a hand suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Don't be impulsive. They won't end well." A pleasant voice reached my ears. I looked up, and Han Sungchen's sharply defined silhouette was against the light. His warm hand covered the back of my hand. I blushed and pulled my hand away. He said, "Let's go. Finish the important thing." I suppressed the anger in my heart and nodded. Gucci adjusted his clothes at the door and then sat down beside me. He explained to me. I had a bit of a stomachache. I looked ahead and ignored him, until Feng Xiaoyun also came back from outside a minute later. She walked over quickly and sat down on the other side of me, deliberately revealing a clear hickey. She said, "Baby, it's my first time at such an occasion. It's really an eye-opener." I sneered and said, "Well, it really is an eye-opener." She thought she had won a trophy, but she didn't know that the show was yet to come. On the stage, my father read out the names of the companies that came to compete for the project. The first one was the name of Gucci's family. Finally, my father put down the booklet in his hand and said, "This competition is fair and just. Please have the leaders of each company come on stage to give a self-introduction." This confused Gucci and everyone present. They had thought that this was a predetermined quota, and not many people would have prepared in advance. At most, it was just going through the motions. Gucci was thus pushed onto the stage and stumbled as he talked about his plan for the project. Because he was so confident of winning, he couldn't come up with good solutions to many common problems in the project. He also made some jokes, and some people whispered, "Can you really take on this project? Damn, if I were the son-in-law, I could do it too. A man who relies on his wife." I thought he had some real ability. Beads of sweat also appeared on Gucci's forehead. "Okay, let's welcome the next one." Amid the curious gazes of everyone, Han Songchen confidently picked up the microphone and began to talk at length about his plan for the project. 10 minutes later, there was a round of applause from the audience. Everyone already knew who would win the project. During this period, Gucci tugged at my sleeve, frowned, and blamed me. "Xiao Shuang, did you deliberately embarrass me? You knew that today's process was different from usual, but you didn't tell me in advance." I spread my hands and said, "Who can you blame if you don't have the ability?" Feng Xiaoyun was stunned as she watched Han Songchen, who used to be unruly, now shining brightly, and she regretted it deeply. She couldn't believe it and grabbed my hand, saying, "Shuang, when did Han Songchen become Mr. Han?" I smiled and said, "After you divorced him, he went home to inherit the family property." Feng Xiaoyun said unhappily, "It was you who obtained the surveillance footage and personally helped us get divorced. It's all your fault. You made me lose my good life. I think you're a green tea bitch." After saying that, she picked up a glass of champagne on the table and threw it at my face. I don't know when Han Songchen walked to my side, he pulled me aside, and the champagne missed me and spilled all over the floor. After I stood still, without saying a word, I quickly picked up the champagne and threw it at Feng Xiaoyun, accompanied by her scream of "ah." Everyone at the scene looked over. Her hair was wet. She was in a sorry state, and she sat on the ground wailing. She pointed at me and shouted, "This is the daughter of the Chia family, bullying a woman who has no power or influence." There were many media reporters at the scene. They seized the opportunity and rushed over. They started questioning me without distinguishing right from wrong. "Miss Chiao, do you really hate your best friend that much? Can't we be friends with you if we don't have money? You seem so friendly usually. But I didn't expect you to play such a duplicitous game." Feng Xiaoyun cried pitifully. When all the cameras were on her, she suddenly stopped crying. Then, she said to the camera, "It's all her. She colluded with my ex-husband. I didn't see her true colors until I got divorced. She has already had an affair with my husband." After saying that, she took out her phone and opened a photo. In the photo, I was holding Han Sungchen's wrist with one hand and squatting down, not knowing what I was doing. Anyway, from that angle, it really looked like Han Songchen and I had intimate contact. I thought about it carefully, This was probably the day he came to find me. When we went out of the company to do something together, I sprained my ankle and instinctively grabbed his wrist. I never expected to be photographed. When I was being severely criticized, Han Samchin stood up. He said coldly, "Fang Xiaoyun, haven't you had enough of accusing others first when you're the one at fault? Next, I'll show you what it means to be too clever for your own good." In full view of everyone, Han Samchin put a video on the screen. Before he even clicked to play the video, just by looking at the cover, I knew what he was going to show. I didn't care about anything else. I took 2 steps at a time and rushed onto the stage. Snatching his phone and disconnecting the Bluetooth connection, I shook my head at him and said, "No, if you play this video now, it will be an invasion of someone else's privacy. Moreover, there are too many live streaming devices here. You might even get arrested if things go wrong." My professional ethics compelled me to do so. While everyone was still confused, Gucci panicked. Others might not know what it was, but he knew very well. Fang Xiaoyun stood in front of the stage, haughtily saying, "Play it, Han Samchin, why don't you dare to play it?" Seeing this, Gucci rushed forward and covered her mouth, whispering fiercely in her ear, "Enough, Xiaoyun." He forcefully dragged Fang Xiaoyun out of the hall, and the reporters were blocked by his bodyguards. Han Samchin frowned and asked me, "Just let them go like this?" I smiled bitterly and said, "We can't sacrifice your future for these 2 despicable people, can we?" After hearing this, Han Samchin burst into laughter. Almost unable to close his mouth, the corners of his mouth curved into a nice arc, and he said, "You underestimate me, Qiao Shuang." He clicked on the video that hadn't been played on the public screen just now. In the video, Gucci and Fang Xiaoyun were seen holding hands and kissing during their trip to Jeju Island, since it was nighttime and the visibility was poor. I mistakenly thought it was the video he had taken outside the stairwell just now. I stamped my foot in regret and muttered to myself, "Ah, my damned professional habit." Han Samchin shook his head at me indulgently and said, "I really can't do anything about you." At night, Gucci pushed open the door of the bedroom and pulled me into his arms. His voice was soft, with a hint of flattery. "Shuang, things aren't as you think. She and I are just friends. Xiaoyun is your best friend. So I agreed to let her join my company. Isn't that to show you some respect?" I smiled, but remained silent, staring intently into Gucci's eyes. He felt a chill under my gaze. Then he took out his phone and put Xiaoyun on the blacklist right in front of me. He raised 3 fingers solemnly and said, "I, Gucci, swear to the heavens that I won't do anything to betray my wife." He shook my arm, as if acting coquettishly. "Wife, talk to me. I forgive you." Without hesitation, I casually pushed his hand away. I added, "I'm too tired today. Don't touch me. Just go to bed quickly." I turned on my side and stopped looking at him. However, from the reflection of the bay window, I saw him smiling triumphantly. I guess he was thinking that I was easy to placate. The next morning, the phone rang. "Hello." I answered the phone in a daze. A very deep and ambiguous male voice came from the other end. "Qiao, get up quickly. I'll take you to City H to have soybean milk and fried dough sticks." Gucci beside me was awakened by our commotion, hearing the man's voice. He immediately sat up alertly and questioned me, "Who is that? Inviting you to breakfast early in the morning." I got up lazily and started choosing my clothes. Then I casually said to Gucci, "Oh, a friend inviting you to breakfast early in the morning. What kind of breakfast requires going to the neighboring city to eat? Can't you have it at home?" Facing his questions, I just felt annoyed. I perfunctorily answered him while quickly changing my clothes. "He's not an ordinary friend, he's a partner of the Chia family." After saying that, I heard a rumbling sound downstairs, so I ran downstairs without looking up. When I got into Han Sungchin's supercar, Gucci leaned up from the 2nd floor, "Put my wife down, damn it." The supercar sped on the highway, and I was touching up my makeup in the car. Han Sungchin suddenly said, "Actually, I didn't cheat when I was with Fang Xiaoyun." I stopped the hand that was about to stick on my false eyelashes and said, "Is this a scumbag's redemption story?" He was amused by my words and explained, "That woman is the secretary of my client. I investigated her privately. She had contact with Feng Xiaoyun shortly after my divorce. I found that she frequently entered high-end clubs, so I vaguely suspected that Feng Xiaoyun gave her a lot of money, after all. She got a lot of money from me." Han Songchen was right. The main purpose of my helping Feng Xiaoyun with the lawsuit was to get his money. I asked him, "So you didn't have anything happen with that woman holding the steering wheel?" He looked a bit confused and said, "Actually, I'm not sure, because I was really dizzy that day. I don't know exactly what happened." Then I realized that it was very likely that Feng Xiaoyun had set a trap. The purpose was to empty all of Han Songchen's possessions and even make him lose his reputation. Feng Xiaoyun didn't expect that Han Songchen had hidden this from her. His parents were well-known figures in Beijing, but they were very low-key. While I was thinking, Han Songchen's phone rang. I accidentally caught a glimpse that it was from Feng Xiaoyun. Han Songchen ignored it. It wasn't until the phone rang 3 times that I said, "Answer it and see what she has to say." Then he pressed the answer button and turned on the speakerphone. "What is it, Aiken? I'm pregnant. Can you come and pick me up?" At the door of Feng Xiaoyun's villa, when she saw Han Songchen getting out of the sports car, she rushed over in a hurry and put her arms around his neck. "Husband, I regret it. Can you give me another chance?" Her shoulders were twitching, and her eyes were incredibly red. For the sake of caution, Han Songchen insisted on taking her to the hospital for an examination. She was unyielding and held up the examination form in her hand, saying, "I've already had an examination. Don't you trust me?" Han Songchen smiled softly, walked beside the supercar, and said to me, "Sorry, the car can only see 2 people. I'm sorry to trouble you." I sensibly got out of the car. Feng Xiaoyun incredulously stepped forward and raised her hand. "You fox, it's all your fault that I got divorced." I grabbed her wrist and squeezed out through my teeth. "Feng Xiaoyun, don't push your luck." After saying that, I walked outside, hailed a taxi, and left. On the way back to the law firm, I looked at my phone. Gucci had called me dozens of times and sent countless messages. "What's the relationship between you and Han Songchen? If you go, don't come back. You're such a fickle woman. Wife, I was a bit harsh. Please come back," while flipping through the chat records. Lawyer Lu, who had the best relationship with me in the law firm, called me. "Hello, Lawyer Chiao. Something terrible has happened." When I rushed to the law firm, I found that the company's sign had been smashed. There were also several glaring red words sprayed on the wall. "Chiao Shuang is a mistress who destroys other people's marriages. She deserves to die." People around were pointing fingers at me. Only Lawyer Lu stepped forward to comfort me. "Don't listen to those gossips. I know best what kind of person you are. I've always kept my personal life and work separate, so the people in the company didn't know that I was the daughter of the richest man in the city." I was very touched that Lawyer Lu could be so close to me. "Thank you, Lawyer Lu." She took out 2 bottles of white spray paint from her bag and smiled, saying, "Come on, let's wipe them off." I frowned, but in the end, I did as she said. After all, I had caused trouble for the company. Seeing that I was in a bad mood, Lawyer Lu insisted on taking me for a few drinks. The colorful lights flickered, shining on the lonely people. Lawyer Lu went to the restroom and didn't come out for several minutes. "Sorry for keeping you waiting. I had a bit of diarrhea today." She apologized and poured me a glass of wine. I took a couple of sips, and my head started to feel dizzy. I wanted to go to the restroom to wash my face and sober up. On the way, I caught a glimpse of 2 familiar faces. Feng Xiaoyun and the mistress of Han Songchen at that time. They looked at me with smiles, resting their chins on their hands without any scruples. The next second, my eyes went black, and I lost consciousness. When I woke up, the sunlight shone through the gap in the black curtains onto my eyelids. I opened my eyes slightly, and a warmth came from beside me. It was a man's arm. Then, the door was pushed open with a bang, and someone shouted loudly, "Chiao Shuang, you seduced my man." I got up abruptly, and several people holding phones rushed in from outside. Everyone, come and take a look. Lawyer Xiao Shuang has no moral integrity and is having an affair while married. Friends in the live broadcast room, this is the top lawyer in our eyes. In fact, she's just a slut. I heard that she stole her best friend's husband and forced them to divorce. Feng Xiaoyun was in the lead. She crossed her arms over her chest and smiled triumphantly. The man beside me was sleeping soundly. Lying on his side with his face covered by the quilt, I tightly held the corner of the quilt, trying my best not to be photographed. I trembled in fear and said, Feng Xiaoyun, you guys, what you're doing is illegal. I even regarded you as my sister, and I helped you with the lawsuit for free, helping you take away the scumbag's property. Is this how you repay me? She didn't show any guilt for lying and sneered, my dear best friend. If I had known that Han Songchen's parents were powerful, I would never have divorced him. As for you, you just couldn't stand to see me doing well. When Gucci chose you between the two of us, you should have been content, but after you got married, you always showed off with those high-end goods, saying that you bought too many and would give them to me. Weren't you just showing off your superiority? Your family is so wealthy, but you still pretend to be poor outside. Your colleagues don't even know your identity. If it weren't for me, Lawyer Lu would still be kept in the dark by you. It turned out that Feng Xiaoyun had always held a grudge against me. Gucci and my family were a good match in terms of social status, and I had truly loved him. She always thought that my family background dominated my relationship with Gucci. I was afraid that Feng Xiaoyun wouldn't have a good life, so I kept looking for suitable people to introduce to her. In the end, she found Han Songchen, the racing driver, by herself. She often told me how excellent her husband was and how rich he was. I smiled brightly, took her hand, and said, Yun, as long as you're happy. Then I turned around and gave her bags and jewelry worth tens of thousands of yuan. I didn't expect that she thought I was showing off. Lawyer Lu adjusted her glasses frame and raised her phone with a smile, saying, Lawyer Qiao, you've ruined me. I was confused and looked at her blankly. She laughed maniacally. Back then, we joined the company together. Your academic qualifications were not as good as mine, and you took on fewer cases than me. You weren't even among those who worked overtime. But what happened? A trace of sadness flashed in Lawyer Lu's eyes. But you have a wealthy family, great power, and are good at speaking. That's why you won Mr. Pay's favor and were given so many major cases. Are people like us, who have no family background, just meant to be the stepping stones for your promotion? She pointed at Feng Xiaoyun resentfully and said, if it weren't for Xiaoyun, I would still be kept in the dark. I was wondering why I couldn't catch up with you no matter how hard I tried. It turns out that you're the daughter of the richest man. The world is so unfair. After listening to her accusations, I just felt a pang of pain in my heart. Over the years, I haven't had an easy life. Although I don't have to worry about food and clothing, I also have my own ideals and ambitions. I only take on major and important cases and have never lost a case. That's why I became famous. Normally, I help those poor victims who can't afford a lawyer with their lawsuits. I often stay up late, memorize legal provisions, or watch the trial processes of some cases, but I've never been showy and have always been low-key. However, Lawyer Lu misunderstood me and thought that I never worked overtime and didn't work hard. A satisfied smile appeared on Lawyer Lu's face. She stepped forward and grabbed the corner of the quilt. However, today, you will fall from your pedestal. She pulled the quilt away, and the man beside me was revealed. Everyone was stunned. Gucci was hugging me. Outside the door, there was the sound of applause. What a frame-up! Everyone turned around in unison. Han Songchen, dressed in a suit, was clapping and cheering. Feng Xiaoyun unconsciously took 2 steps back, covered her mouth, and stammered, You shouldn't be in Xiao Shuang's bed. The corners of my mouth curved slightly. I picked up the sheer coat beside me and put it on. I lowered my eyes and woke up Gucci, who was still sleeping soundly. He opened his eyes sleepily. The moment he saw Feng Xiaoyun, his pupils suddenly shrank, and he sat up from the bed. Since everyone is here, let's make things clear. I turned my head and said to the camera. Gucci and Fang Xiaoyun wanted to join forces to push me and Han Songchen to the forefront of public opinion. During the time I was helping Fang Xiaoyun with the lawsuit, she met lawyer Lu, and the two of them hit it off and designed this trap. How did I find out that lawyer Lu was acting strangely when she took out 2 bottles of white latex paint? I clearly saw that there was a 3rd bottle of red paint still in her bag. Later, Fang Xiaoyun brought Han Songchen to the hotel, saying that she wanted to get back together with him. Han Songchen pretended to agree and came to the hotel. Fang Xiaoyun put a sleeping pill in his wine glass. He pretended to drink it and then pretended to be asleep, and she carried him to the bed. Then, she and Han Songchen's mistress went to the bar to meet lawyer Lu. They happened to see that I was also out of my mind after drinking, and they brought me to Han Songchen's room. That's right, actually, I didn't drink the drugged wine either. I called Gucci and told him that the project my dad gave to Han Songchen could be his, and he came quickly. So, this is the scene you see now. Fang Xiaoyun slumped to the ground, shaking her head and muttering, "No, it's impossible. How could this plan have leaked out?" I smiled and said, "Xiaoyun, no matter how much you calculated, you never expected that the Gucci who said he loved you is much more realistic than you, right?" I turned my head and looked at the man on the bed whom I had once loved desperately. My heart was filled with bitterness. Gucci's phone password had never been changed. On the night he begged me to forgive him, I opened his phone for the first time. I took Fang Xiaoyun out of the blacklist, and I saw their chat records. Gucci, I've come up with a way to make Xia Shuang lose her reputation completely, so that you can divorce her justifiably. Just let her sleep in the same bed as my ex-husband. I'll find someone to do a live broadcast and make them never recover. Gucci, are you crazy? Xia Shuang is my wife, and I won't divorce her. Fang Xiaoyun, don't lie to me. Okay, Gucci, my hands are shaking now. You were the one who told me to get divorced. You said you would marry me. Now I have nothing. I really only have you left. Gucci, damn it, stop pestering me. It's your ex-husband who caused me to lose the project that was already in my hands. Do you know how much money I lost? Fang Xiaoyun, that's why I said let them both lose their reputations. Gucci, get lost. Upon learning the truth, Fang Xiaoyun's legs went weak, and she slumped to the ground. Tears streamed down her face, making her look pitiful. She cried and shouted at Gucci, questioning him. Did you really never love me even for a single day? Were all the years we spent together fake? Gucci turned his face away, not daring to look at her, and said, I never loved you. Sleeping with you was just for the thrill. Men are much more realistic than women. Fang Xiaoyun stood up reluctantly and roared, No, it's impossible. You said you loved me. After saying that, with overwhelming hatred in her eyes, she turned her head and looked at me, almost in an instant. She picked up a vase from the hotel and threw it to the ground. The vase shattered instantly, and the water in it splashed everywhere, causing the scene to be in chaos for a while. She picked up a piece of the fragment, shouting and rushing towards me. Since he doesn't love me, you won't be able to get his love either. No, be careful. Two men shouted simultaneously. The moment the fragment fell, I instinctively closed my eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I saw blood spreading on the ground. I looked up and met Han Songchen's gaze. He covered his wound and asked me cautiously, Are you okay? Tears suddenly filled my eyes, and my fingers trembled as I stroked the injured area. The warm blood kept flowing, and I was crying so hard that I couldn't speak. Call an ambulance. Hurry, call an ambulance. Everyone was stunned with fear, including the netizens in the live broadcast room at this time. Gucci had already controlled the crazy Fang Xiaoyun. The others were also in a hurry to call 120 and 110. A month later, outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, can't we not get a divorce? Shuang. Gucci's broad hand gripped my slender wrist. No, I remember when you proposed to me. I asked you a question. Did you say that you would only love me for the rest of your life? What did you say? He paused for a moment and remembered that year when he firmly said to me, Who else could I love if I don't love you? You are the only one I love in my life. But Gucci's life of love for me was a bit short, only 3 years. He felt a bit melancholy, and more than that, he was regretful. His eyes suddenly turned red, and he sobbed, I'm sorry, Chia Shuang, I betrayed you, and I deserve to be in this situation today. I gently pushed his hand away, with a look of melancholy on my face. The boy who brought me breakfast every day in high school, fetched me hot water, and was the first to stand up for me when I was bullied, had long since drifted away. The most memorable time was after he confessed to me and I agreed. He was more than 1,000 kilometers away, couldn't get a ticket, but still stood for more than 10 hours and came to the city where I was studying to celebrate my birthday. I believe there is true love in this world, but true love can change in an instant. Forget it, Gucci, our story ends here. I resolutely stepped into the Civil Affairs Bureau. He slowly followed me in his extremely reluctant state. We got the divorce certificate. We came out of the Civil Affairs Bureau together. He looked at the foggy and rainy day and finally burst into tears, pulling me into his arms. I can't live without you, Chia Shuang. Just then, a supercar roared over and stopped beside us. Gucci immediately held back his tears. When I saw that it was Han Sangchen, a smile immediately appeared on my face, and I ran towards him, saying, I thought you weren't coming. Then let your husband accompany me. Han Sangchen said in a sarcastic tone. Amidst Gucci's endless regret, I got into someone else's car. Let's go. My dad is still waiting for us at home. During this period, my dad had been keeping a close eye on the project managed by Han Sangchen. Compared with the projects that Gucci had been in charge of before, Han Sangchen was really dedicated. Just looking at the profits, they had increased several times compared to before. At the dinner table, my dad couldn't stop smiling and praised him as a young talent. Looking back, my dad had never looked at Gucci directly and always felt unhappy. At first, I was determined to marry Gucci, and my dad could only go along with my wishes. Now that we have settled things with the Gu family, our family business has been getting better and better. During the meal, Han Sangchen mentioned, Uncle Chiao, I heard that you liked playing with supercars when you were young. How about we have a race? I immediately stopped him and said, my dad is getting old. Don't drag him into this nonsense. My dad wasn't happy when he heard this and said, you little girl, what are you talking about? How am I old? Let's race. Let's do it today. Boy, I'll show you that Shuang's dad is never someone who will admit defeat. He even stamped his foot in a hurry, making our whole family burst into laughter. That night, my mom and I were at the finish line, and we waited for my dad and Han Sangchen one after another. Han Sangchen got out of the driver's seat, took off his helmet, clasped his fists together, and kept praising, Uncle, you're so skilled. We younger generations really need to learn from you. My dad also got out of the car. He was very pleased to hear the praise. He also said modestly, not at all. The younger generation is formidable. The younger generation is formidable. My dad immediately commanded me, saying, what are you standing there for? Hurry up and pass some water to Xiaohan and wipe his sweat. Han Sangchen changed his words according to the situation and said, thank you, Dad. The end.